Sandra?
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Francina,
Here.
Commissioner Santangelo,
I'm here.
Commissioner McCall,
Sandra?
Commissioner Enegren,
Present.
Commissioner Zaragoza, Commissioner Gama, Commissioner Kavanaugh,
Here.
Commissioner Sanchez Palacios,
And I'm out.
So Yvonne Gonzalez is not a commissioner. She's not muted. So this is the time we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand and join me. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to
to the flag of the United States of America,
which it
to the
stands,
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all. Thank you very much. Okay, very good. So now we have one business item, and this is by popular request to understand what is the situation with community cats and our Animal Services Commission and our Animal Services Department doing it. So I'll turn it over to Jackie Rose, our director, to explain what we're doing here today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this special meeting. Just to be clear, I had intended to have this conversation at our last commission meeting in August, but then we ended up canceling that meeting. And I felt that this topic was important enough and timely enough that we didn't want to wait till our next quarterly meeting in November. And so I asked Commissioner Ramirez to consider holding a special meeting. So that's why we're here. I am happy to announce that we're going to spend quite a bit of time today providing some information to you all regarding feline services, community cats. We're going to talk about it from really a very macro level. And then we're going to also talk about it, what it means here for us locally here in Ventura County. I am thrilled to announce that Dr. Kate Hurly, who is one of the faces in the boxes that's waving at you that you may not recognize, that Dr. Hurly is joining us for this. Dr. Hurly is truly one of the preeminent, well-respected experts in our field nationally regarding shelter medicine. She runs the Koret shelter medicine program at UC Davis and has for many years. Has also been the co-founder, co-facilitator, co-creator of the Million Cat Challenge. And Dr. Hurly is really the person that we all turn to in the field as a professional, seeking guidance and support as to how to best manage community cats, as well as other cat services, as well as all animals in sheltering, but really specifically for this topic, she really is the expert. We are so fortunate that she is here locally in our state because she has such a huge influence on all of the activities that we're doing statewide. So I've asked Dr. Hurly to join us. I'll let her do a little bit better intro and bio about herself. But what we're going to do is Dr. Hurly is going to do part of a presentation, and then I'm going to follow it up with a subsequent presentation of information. I am going to ask, because there's so much information that we have to share, that if we can hold comments and questions to the end of the presentation. Feel free to either write them down or put them in the chat, and then we can call them out, or we can just at the end of the presentation just have everyone kind of jump in and have this. We'd like it to be a dialogue between ourselves and you guys as commissioners. We also do have a public comment section that will also be at the end of this meeting. We'll probably put that maybe in between comments and the presentation. So without any further ado, I am going to turn this over to Dr. Hurly and ask her to kind of kick this piece off for us. The one last piece I just want to share. There has been a lot of conversation about cats in Ventura County what we specifically as an agency are doing, as well as what the community resources are. So that's really going to be the thrust of this conversation this morning. And I hope that this is really something that will be helpful and enlightening to all of you. So Dr. Hurly, without any further ado, we'll let you take that away.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Sandra. I just wanted to let you guys know Commissioner Zaragoza is joined the meeting.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
My apologies. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining us, Commissioner Zaragoza. We
Thank you
appreciate
so much.
Thanks so much. It's exciting to be here. I'm getting more requests to talk to groups like yours. I've more commonly spoken to animal shelter groups. Oh Lord, I have to hide my own self view because I can't be seeing my own face that large. So I put my email in the chat. I really welcome your feedback on this presentation, like what was too much detail, what would be more helpful detail, and any questions you have following this presentation. My credentials, as Jackie mentioned, I co-founded the Million Cat Challenge, which is the world's largest feline life-saving campaign. I also was the first person to do a residency in shelter medicine. And I co-authored the textbook, Infectious Disease Management in Animal Shelters, and co-authored the Association of Shelter Veterinarians Guidelines for Standards of Care in Animal Shelters. But I think on this topic, maybe my most important credential is just that I've been thinking about this since I took a job as an animal control officer over 30 years ago to put myself through college. So I've really seen this aspect, this issue from many different aspects and really intimately over a number of years and decades now. And what I've tried to do in these slides is really distill down, especially the last decade, of how our approach to community cat management, specifically in animal shelters. So this is not the whole picture. This is just the appropriate role for animal shelters to take, has evolved. It's exciting. It's also a lot of change for shelters to grapple with and for communities to understand as well, because it's different from the way we thought about doing things for about the first 140 years of animal shelters in the United States. So I'm going to share some slides. Can you see that? Is that working?
No.
Okay.
There we go, Kate. It's coming up.
There you go.
All right. I think we're there. So just highlighting that we're talking about the animal shelter's role. I'm going to go through this all pretty quick. So this is me 30 years ago as an animal control officer, bringing a cat in to an animal shelter with the goal that ideally the cat would be reunited with its owner, right? That's why we have stray holding periods. And then if that didn't happen, we would put the cat up for adoption. And if that didn't happen, typically we would humanely euthanize the cat, something that I did myself many times, with the understanding that that was the way to prevent suffering, painful death, and just like unacceptable issues arising around community cats. So not something that we wanted to do, but something that we understood was an important element of responsible cat management practices. Now let's look at how that fits in with California law and policy regarding community animal management. There is no statewide requirement for management of healthy cats in California. Municipalities have no obligation to provide community members with solutions regarding healthy cats. That's something that can be a choice. Services, it is stated that services should be provided for injured and sick animals and pets in imminent danger. So in the median strip of a freeway, abandoned in a hot car. If stray cats are impounded, which is not an obligation, then the law states that no cat shall be killed before 72 hours. It doesn't actually prohibit other things from happening in that 72-hour time period, such as sterilization and return, or return to the owner, or other positive outcomes. And then a state policy that no adoptable or treatable animal should be euthanized, although this is not a legal obligation, but that's We recently, this latest budget, received $50 million over 5 years to ensure that California shelters are able to meet that policy goal. And this is, as I said, I'm going to focus on the last 10 years. So this is data from our local shelter from 2008 through 2010. That's really typical of what was happening across California 10 years ago under our sort of historic policy of cat management. The purple lines, total intake, the blue lines, live release. So a big gap there between the cats that we were bringing in with good intentions of solving various problems in the community and the cats that were either returned to their owner or adopted out, as was the goal. So resulting in over 3/4 of cats brought into California animal shelters. This is locally, but this reflected the statewide data at the time being euthanized. At the time in 2010, it was over 700 cats a day. And what that reflected was a fundamental mismatch between the tool we were using to manage cats and what really is appropriate for that species. And it reflects a difference between dogs and cats. There is about the same number of pet dogs and pet cats in the United States, between 74 million and 86 million pet cats. More than half of cats in the US are kept indoors, and more than 80% are spayed and neutered. In some studies, in some areas, that's well over 95% of pet cats are spayed and neutered. And this is the target of the traditional shelter model that assumes that there is an owner in a traditional way. The problem is, while we don't have free roaming, free breeding population of dogs in California or in the US, there is 30 to 80 million community cats, unowned or semi-owned, or have 5 different owners and front porches and names that they sometimes respond to. 100% of the time they are outdoors. And less than 5% of those cats are aggregated into what's sometimes called colonies or highly visible groups around a food source. So we don't even know where most of those cats are. And public spay neuter, legal interventions, humane education, none of those shelter-based programs are going to be effective at managing this population of cats. There is no owner to come to the shelter and claim those cats, and oftentimes they're not even good candidates for adoption. So this was about 10 years ago that this article came out. It's January of 2012. The San Jose City Shelter was among the first in the US to try a new approach. Instead of following that pathway of hold them, hope the owner comes back, or hope that they get adopted, or euthanize them, the cat was in good condition and didn't come from an environmentally sensitive location. They sterilized it and they put it back. Now, not surprisingly, this is an article that was published after a few years of this program. Euthanasia dropped drastically, and that was a good thing. But really striking was that the number of cats picked up dead decreased by 20%, and overall intake of both cats and kittens decreased by almost 1/3. And this was in the absence of any change in policy regarding admission or field pickup of dead animals. So it suggested that, in fact, there was fewer cats being born, fewer cats out and about in the community, a stabilization of the population overall, and a reduction of risk. So we gained a new pathway, which is trap, neuter, return, or community cat programs. I'm going to put this new concept under the umbrella of community cat programs because there's a number of different ways now that they have evolved. These can be based out of a shelter, as was the case in San Jose. They did the sterilization and then they transferred the cats to a rescue group for return. It can be based out of a private group. So cats can simply be referred by the shelter to a private group, or it can be a partnership between the shelter and private groups in the community to provide the right solutions for cats that are out and about. These are these cats with no clear evidence of ownership. They might be healthy, they might be feral, they might be friendly. They might be feral or friendly, but they're in good health, they're out and about. And instead of admitting them to the shelter, we're going to make an effort to refer them to services for sterilization, vaccination, ear tip, and return to the location found where possible. But also, and this is an important role for the shelter to play, to provide community members with resources for coexistence, information about like how to find out if a cat has an owner or not, how to keep the cat out of your yard if it's bothering you, how to keep it from jumping on your car and leaving footprints on the windshield, how to help your neighbors if they're getting overrun by cats and the cats are creating a nuisance and also a welfare situation. So it's a community-based approach to stabilizing cats and solving problems rather than focusing on impounding the cats to the shelter. And it works, as seen in the San Jose example, much better than what we were doing. And here's just a little sort of animation of why that is. We know that 1 in 7 people in the US admits to feeding cats that they don't own on purpose. And then in addition, of course, there's bowls of dog food on back porches, and there's open dumpsters and all kinds of other food sources. And one thing we know is that litter-bearing mammals always breed in proportion to the amount of food available in the environment. That is 100% of the time. That is the entire strategy of litter-bearing mammals. So let's imagine that for each equivalent of a bowl of food, a cat can have 1 kitten. And let's imagine that there's 3 unspayed cats in an alley somewhere where there's the equivalent of 6 bowls of food. So on average, 2 bowls for each cat. Each cat can have 2 kittens. There's an R on all the kittens and the adult cats because they can get rabies. They're not vaccinated. And then there's a T on the kittens. That's for toxoplasmosis. And that's a disease with some public health implications. And it is a disease of kittens. They get it once, they shed for 2 weeks, and then they develop substantial immunity. So under the old policy that I sort of came up with, we take 1 of those cats away. Now we don't have the resources. Like there's 30 to 60 million of these cats in the United States. We're not going to get them all. But we take 1 away. But we didn't remove the food source. Doesn't really matter if that cat is adopted out or relocated or euthanized. She's gone from the environment. But because we didn't identify the food source and eliminate it, what's going to happen? Still 2 cats? Each cat now has access to 3 bowls of food on average, same number of kittens. And without that adult cat holding her spot, we see immigration of 2 littler cats. So we actually have a higher number of cats in the community, a higher level of risk and spread. And when those cats migrated from one neighborhood into this one, perhaps they were at risk of getting hit by cars or spreading disease from one area to another. So to the opposite of the reduction in cats hit by cars that we saw in the San Jose model. So this is a really powerful lesson. What if instead, so even just leaving the cat there, results in at least an absence of the destabilization of removing the cat. Removing the cat in itself does some harm. If we could sterilize that cat, ear tip her, vaccinate her for rabies, and return her to the location found, her average lifespan might be as long as about 10 years. She's going to hold that spot. She's going to eat that food. And the other 2 cats are going to have they're going to have the same number of kittens, but fewer kittens overall coming out of that alley. And so that models what we saw in San Jose, right? A reduction in cats hit by cars, reduction in cats roaming, and a reduction in the birth of cats and kittens. That was a model it's sort of a thought model that I developed before this article came out in 2014 that showed the exact harm of removal. When up to 30 to 40% of cats were removed from an environment, but the food source wasn't removed, not only did it not lower the population of cats, but the population, the absolute number of cats present when removal took place increased by over 200% in some places. So just by allowing shelters to remove healthy cats from the environment without simultaneously finding and eliminating that 1 in 7 people that's feeding cats, which is impossible to do, we actually were chronically destabilizing populations, increasing the number of cats present, increasing the number of kittens born, and increasing the number of risks and harms and nuisances associated with cats. So that was not a good system. Difficult to sort of wrap our minds around that because we had such good intentions. But in fact, simply stopping the ad hoc removal of cats from the environment, absent any method to address the food source that they were accessing, will decrease the number of cats and decrease the harm associated with cats and decrease the risk to cats. Now, this started really with an emphasis on reducing the euthanasia of cats that weren't candidates for adoption. But as these programs have matured, we've recognized that there might be even more benefits to this approach for friendly cats. Remember that the first goal of a public animal shelter is to reunite animals with their owners. That is why we have those stray holding periods. That is often why we build shelters in the first place. But there's an important difference between dogs and cats. Dogs are very likely to be recovered, or relatively likely to be recovered by a call or a visit to an animal shelter. It's more how people think, it's more how people relate to dogs. The timing is better because dogs, when they get lost, often get found quickly. Cats, when they get lost, often don't get found quickly, and people don't start looking quickly. So as a result, an early study showed that fewer than 1 in 10 cats were recovered by a call or a visit to a shelter, where the vast majority, more than 80%, were recovered by a neighborhood-based solution. Either the cat returned home on its own, or they found it by posting signs or calling around in the neighborhood. That trend has only been magnified with technology and the ease of posting found animals and finding found animals on social media. And subsequent studies have shown that the number is more like 1 in 50 is reunited by a call or a visit to an animal shelter. And in this study, cats were actually twice as likely to be found inside the house where they lived versus by a call or a visit to an animal shelter. So again, by leaving cats in the neighborhood where they are, as long as they're healthy and not in immediate danger, we can guide finders to use neighborhood-based solutions that are more likely to achieve that result of reuniting the cat with his or her family. Above all, shelters should aim to do no harm, right? To not remove cats from the environment and reduce the likelihood that they'll ever get back home and increase the number of cats and kittens that are present. So this was a shelter, this is from 2015. This was a shelter, a public shelter in the city of Chico that was one of the first to just say, we're going to stop taking in healthy cats, period. We will refer them to spay neuter resources of the community. We will provide people with education and information about how they can coexist successfully with those cats, how to feed responsibly and reduce the amount of cats and nuisance wildlife that are being attracted, but they weren't going to take them in. And now they actually have better conversations because people can't just drop the cat off at the shelter and not think about it anymore. People in the community get engaged with finding real solutions, whether it's bringing in that bowl of dog food from their back porch or putting a cover on their trash can, or finding a way to access TNR services. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to emphasize that we've come to realize this is really an important equity issue. This is a study that showed that more than 90% of people in underserved communities have never been to a shelter at all. So when a cat comes in from an underserved community, even more likely that that cat may not get back to whether it was a traditional home or a back porch where just some lady really loved that cat and loved to see that cat every day, but didn't see herself completely as the owner of that cat. And when we flip that around to a neighborhood-based solution, every cat is an opportunity to build a bridge with someone in these more vulnerable and marginalized communities. This is a picture of one such actual reunion that happened because of a community cat program. A cat was brought into a shelter, but was returned to the location found. And that is when they discovered that this cat had an owner and someone who loved her. So our new understanding is that really community cat programs are a way to get cats back to homes. Community cat programs are also a way to sort of support spay, neuter, and education for people who already have cats in homes but need some help to make that a more successful relationship. And so this new understanding is reflected in this position statement that recently came out from the National Animal Care and Control Association, that healthy free-roaming cats, regardless of temperament, should not be admitted to animal shelters for any purpose other than trap, neuter, and return. Thoughtful admission of cats target situations where cats are unhealthy or in a situation of exigent risk, as I mentioned, on the median strip of a highway or in a building that's about to be torn down or that just burned down, where there's a large group of cats creating a significant nuisance or public health risk situation, where it's in a critical, environmentally sensitive location, where there's evidence of abandonment, or where the owner is truly in crisis. And that's actually a really important point. When we're not admitting all the healthy free roaming cats in the community, the shelter can be present for people who have lost their home, been displaced by wildfire or disaster, or hospitalized with COVID, or are really in crisis and need some support to get through that. And then I just want to briefly touch on kittens. We are at the height of kitten season right now in animal shelter world. It's a very, very busy time of year. And again, just a reminder of the scale of this problem. 30 to 80 million community cats, 1 for every 3 to 12 people in a community. 100% of those cats outdoors, and the vast majority of them not spayed or neutered. So we are working against a flood of cats and sort of against nature. We wouldn't tend to think of managing any other litter-bearing species like squirrels or raccoons or coyotes or rabbits by admitting their offspring to an animal shelter. But because cats are sometimes owned and sometimes pets, and sometimes artificially supported by human food supplementation, we do feel a need and an obligation to provide some more management, more response to kittens that are born. But I just want to emphasize, I don't know if this will be sort of too much to get into here, that litter-bearing mammals have a very different reproductive strategy than we do. We have this type 1, this blue curve, that's a type 1 reproductive curve, where we have very few offspring, the great majority of which survive to adulthood. Cats, bunnies, birds, raccoons, squirrels, they follow more like this type 3 curve, where they have a high number of offspring, relatively few of which survive to adulthood. And this is a relevant parallel because we sort of know how to manage these other species that breed in nature in this same strategy. We assess the young for injury and illness. We emphasize that healthy babies should be left in place to be parented by their mother or their father. That's how that species rolls. We provide links to resources for cohabitation, and we intervene only when needed to prevent suffering. So how do we apply that to many millennia of evolution of cats to be a type 3 breeding species? There's been some research done on this, and the conclusion was clear. The death of kittens under 6 months is most effectively prevented by targeted trap, neuter, and return. That is the biggest bang for the buck, to sort of push that reproductive curve away from high numbers of offspring with low survival to look more like ours. You got to spay the cats, you got to spay them early before they have litters of kittens. So from a shelter perspective, the priority needs to be for healthy unweaned kittens, it's too much to take on the management of the offspring of all those millions of cats, right? It's just not, it's going to overwhelm the systems. So for healthy unweaned kittens, link out to resources. As much resources as the shelter can provide is great, but don't impound healthy unweaned kittens. And basically healthy kittens, very rarely orphans. Sick and injured kittens need to be assessed. And then the shelter foster system should be reserved for those kittens that inevitably do need to come in. Shouldn't be for healthy unweaned kittens. It should be for sick, injured, abandoned, in distress, dumped kittens. And then provide shelter support for spay neuter of those healthy unweaned kittens that didn't come in, came of age, and now need to be adopted out. So to sum this up, I just wanted to speak to overall the priorities for public shelters, because we are seeing shelters across California, including my local shelter, struggling with understaffing and sort of over capacity in various ways. And sort of created this graphic in the hopes that this can help define how shelters should operate. Top priority has to be danger to human health and life. Next priority has to be sick, injured, animals in danger and cruelty. Displaced, owner in crisis, and stray dogs captured at large after some effort has been made to reunite them in the community. Those are the obligations that public entities have to provide. These things are really important too, to reduce the number of sick, injured, at-risk pets in the community. But they are not legal obligations for communities to provide, and oftentimes are best done in public-private partnerships. So I don't want to underemphasize the importance of those. I just want to emphasize that public shelters have an obligation to do the first three things. And if they get over capacity by trying to do too much, won't be able to do even the core activities adequately. And just an additional factor that's really a frustration right now and really distressing to me working at UC Davis Vet School is that, as you know, there's staffing crises across a lot of industries right now, and it's very acute in veterinary medicine and in veterinary nurses. And so just sort of for now, the triage for shelter medical team resources, again, has to first go to those sick and injured animals that come in, and then surgery and spay neuter necessary for release from the shelter, which is required by law in California. Animals have to be spayed and neutered. We got to get that done, or the animals just sit in the shelter, cost more money, get sick, use more resources. Then support of healthy foster kittens so that they can get out of the shelter system. Then safety net services to keep animals from coming in that are about to come in. Then targeted trap neuter return for those cats that are at highest risk for coming into the shelter, creating situations of real concern. And then public services, spay neuter, general trap neuter and return, untargeted trap neuter and return, vaccination of pets, other support. Again, all super important, but important that shelters resource adequately for each concentric ring and find partnerships for the rings at the outside to maximize the community resources that are being invested. I promised to get that done in under half an hour. And I see I did it in 26 minutes, Jackie.
You are the best, Dr. Hurly.
I know that was a whirlwind tour. As I said, my email is in the chat, and we'll have some time for questions, but I wanted to make sure we had a chance for Jackie to talk about how this applies locally.
Well, thank you. And yes, and please, everyone, please be prepared with questions. I'm going to jump into my part of the presentation, which really talks a little bit more of how this gets played out, if you will, at a local level here for us in Ventura County. So I'm going to go ahead and try sharing my screen and see if I can get this to work. So bear with me. Do you all see that screen? Which one? You're seeing the wrong screen. Bear with me 1 second. I had this so perfect yesterday when I did this. So I'm going to just move this here and see if I can get it to work. Don't know why that's not happening. I'm going to try this again. I'm going to move it to this screen.
Sometimes
No.
it works
you guys-
better to not put it in slideshow mode, then share your screen, then put it in slideshow mode.
Yeah, can you guys all see that now?
I saw it before, but not now.
Yeah,
Try clicking the share screen button again.
yeah, hang on one second. I'm really usually pretty good at this. Oh, I know what it is. Hang on one second. Hang on. Here we go. This is gonna work.
There you
All
go.
right. Y'all can see that now?
Yes,
Yes?
yes,
Okay, great.
yes.
Wonderful. You know, when I have 3 screens with the laptop open, it gets even funkier. Okay, so, Dr. Hurly presented, so much fabulous information. And I will share with you that we've been working closely with Dr. Hurly and her team for the past several years. We're very fortunate that UC Davis is here in what I call local area for us for California shelters, because they really are the preeminent experts in this area. There are primarily 3 institutions that we look to in our field for the research, for the information, for the consultation, and for the guidance. UC Davis, Koret Shelter Medicine Program, which is Dr. Hurley's program, University of Florida, and University of Wisconsin. And so again, we're just so fortunate. So when we look at the information here for ourselves, Dr. Hurly talked about the number of cats. Well, here specifically in Ventura County, let's talk about how many cats we have. There is a calculator that was developed, I believe, Dr. Hurly, I think it's University of Wisconsin. I know that you may have had some piece with this. If I'm giving credit to the wrong place, I apologize. But the calculator is used and it helps local jurisdictions get an estimate of how many cats are in their geographic area. And it's based on population size, human population size. So when we look at the numbers here, the estimates that these numbers are going to show are for our 8 contracted cities that you all are contracted with us, as well as unincorporated area of Ventura. It does not include Santa Paula, and it does not include Thousand Oaks because we don't serve those areas. So what we know is that based on this calculator, we have approximately a little over 1 million indoor cats residing here in these areas. We have another 700,000 cats in this area that are considered indoor-outdoor cats. And those are often the cats that really most often are owned. Somebody owns that cat. It maybe sleeps in their house at night. They let it out during the day. They're doing their mousing, but they definitely tend to feel like an owned cat. And then we have the outdoor community cats. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that specifically, but outdoor community cats may be, as Dr. Hurly said, a cat that somebody really does own that they leave outside. It may be a cat that is being cared for by numerous people living in a community, but that's 1 million cats. And so when we look at the magnitude of this issue, it really is really extensive. Just to kind of give a quick overview and reminder to y'all for the services that we actually do provide here at the shelter. And it's best to kind of think about it, I think, in a bifurcated process, thinking about it. One is our sheltering services, and that's the services that we provide to all of the jurisdictions, all of you. And that is sheltering for dogs, cats, rabbits, you name it, all the animals that are coming in. For cats specifically, it's stray cats and own surrendered cats that come to the shelter. And of course, the service we provide to them is comprehensive. It's intake, it's veterinary care, it's placement, being anywhere from adoption to transfers to working whiskers or barn cat programs. And those are the things that you all pay for through your city contracts to us to provide sheltering services. We then have services, the TNR, the trap, neuter, return surgeries that we provide to feral and/or community cats. This has been a service that I'll talk a little bit in a moment. Historically, has changed over time, but currently, although I have to acknowledge right now we're on a temporary suspension due to veterinary shortage, but we, on average, have been providing 16 surgeries a week that are to community cats. That service is not paid for by the cities. That has been service that has been subsidized by the county with some funding through the Herman Bennett Foundation. These cats are brought to us in the morning by folks who trap them. They drop them off. they go to surgery, they're picked up that afternoon, usually held in someone's garage overnight, and then re-released the next day to the community that they came from. So we are not impounding those, and those animals are not being counted towards city contract costs. So thinking about those cats, again, just I had to really spend some time conceptually breaking this out for myself, and so I thought this would be helpful. When we talk about the types of cats that we serve at Vcas, again, we have stray cats and kittens. Those are brought to the community by community members, brought to us. We impound those. They're generally friendly. They may be injured or pregnant, and honestly, we're trying to have folks bring less of the healthy animals to us for all the reasons Dr. Hurly just talked about. But when they do come to us, they're impounded. If they don't have identification of any type, they go on a 3-day stray hold period plus their day of intake, and then we move them through our system for placement and whatever the pathway might be. If they have identification, they go on to a 10-day owner hold, waiting for that owner contact to happen, and hopefully the owner comes to reclaim. And we'll talk a little bit about that further, but we've talked about this in the past. We know our return to owner rate for cats is very low for all the reasons Dr. Hurly just talked about. On the flip side of the feral cats, again, what we just talked about, they come in for TNR services. They're not impounded. There's no holding period. We provide the surgery to them, and then they're returned back to their outdoor homes. I will say, as we go into this, what's important to know is we're not the only ones doing TNR surgery, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. But just to give you an idea of the activities that we have taken over the past several years to address the community cats as well as cat issues here in Ventura County. We've been diligently working on this for the last 2.5 years. I joined the agency in May of 2019. And it was one of the first things that I became acutely aware of was we needed to take a look at how we were managing the cats coming into our shelter. And one of the first things was that in August, we stopped impounding feral cats coming to the shelter for TNR surgery. Up till that time, cats would come in, they were impounded, cities were charged for that. And then that cat was in a holding waiting pattern for our surgery team to find space to complete a surgery on them so that they could be re-released. Problem was we were already overwhelmed with our surgery, so sometimes those cats were sitting for days upon days upon days in a metal box waiting for surgery, which is really the worst thing that we can do to a cat. I know we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but cats get stressed in shelters. The smaller the space that they're in, the more stress they endure. The greater the stress they endure, the greater the opportunity for them to get sick. Once they start to get sick, it's like this vicious spiral, and often will lead to euthanasia because they've become so sick. So the worst thing that we can do is actually take that feral cat, put it in a box and hold it for us to provide surgery. That's the worst thing we can do to them. So we stopped that practice back in August and turned it into a service, meaning cat comes in, as I said, in the morning, gets re-released that afternoon. It's subsidized by the county. We have a little bit of money and Herman Bennett, and it's not actually being charged off to the city. So it was a win-win for the cities. It was also more, or I want to say equally important, a win-win for the cats. But as we started to talk about this, we realized that we had work to do for us to continue to make improvements in this area. And so I had asked Dr. Hurly in January to come do a community cat talk. She was here doing some other consultation work with us, and we got a 2-for-1, and she did an amazing presentation to about 60 people. It was open to the community, about 60 folks attended. Shortly after that, we started talking about how we could put together a working group, a task group, if you would. And so we formed a community task group, and it included the Community Cat Coalition, which is a group of volunteers who are completely unselfishly dedicated to community cats in our area. And the coalition was made up of multiple organizations and trappers. And so we started that conversation. We held several meetings. Several folks who were initially attending decided they did not feel that this was beneficial for them. However, we've continued to hold that. At this time, this group still operates, and it's VCAS. It's a Humane Society of Ventura County, the Herman Bennett Foundation, and Community Cat Charities, which is more from the Community Cat Coalition. In August of 2020, we revised our TNR process to be even more user-friendly. We created an online system for people to be able to sign up for one of those TNR surgery slots, again, with 16 of them a week, so that they didn't have to make calls, and it was easier and more streamlined. So we did that in August of 2000. Whoops, that slide's out of place. I'm going to come back to it. Then in September, we funded a position here for a feline care coordinator in the shelter, someone to be dedicated to the pathways and the care of the cats that do come into our shelter, and to be that liaison to the community. In October, we then hosted another community event with Christy Metropole, who is the CEO from the Stray Cat Alliance in LA, and they have been doing amazing work for the last 15 years. Kate, is that about correct? Just unbelievable work in that area that has had a huge community cat issue for many, many years, and was under an injunction to not do TNR for many years, and has recently been lifted. So Christy did that, and only about 10 people attended, unfortunately. We finalized and updated our website to provide better information, more comprehensive information to the community regarding community cats. And then we also started trying to find funding. Unfortunately, there's not an enormous amount of funding that's readily available. You really have to hunt for it. We were able to pull 2 grants, which I think I've shared with you in the past, from CDFA. I will acknowledge both of these are primarily geared towards owned animals, because that's the funding source. That's not our choice, that's from CDFA. But it all speaks to trying to help the overall problem. If we can help people with their own pets be spayed and neutered, we're also reducing the number of animals that are in the community or spayed and neutered, especially when we talk about 700,000 cats are estimated to be indoor outdoor. So we received some funding from CDFA for 2 different grants that we are implementing and working on. We also have implemented our own cat trap loan program, so people can come borrow traps for us for free, as there are some other resources. They give a deposit and return the trap, and they get their money back. Specifically, because there's a question that keeps coming up by some folks is, what is VCAS doing regarding spay-neuter surgery? And we need to be doing more. And the truth of the matter is, we would love to do more. We would love to solve this problem. I would love to be the one jurisdiction that makes this better, and then call Kate and say, hey, write a paper about us. We would love to do that, but we do have limited resources. And this is a huge, complex problem, but we are doing something. So one is the Community Cat TNR that we just talked about. Then there's the grant that I mentioned before. One is we are now providing we're providing spay-neuter services to intact animals that come to our shelter prior to them going home. We're able to provide that service. So their owner can take them home having been surgicated. We also have some mobile clinics that we've already hosted. We've done 2 of those so far. One of those so far, and we have 3 more scheduled that's coming from grant funds. We're working closely with Simi Valley Spay Neuter Mobile Clinic, and we'll be providing for surgery for up to 100 animals under that funding. We also have some funding that we are now accessing through what we call our Spay Neuter Trust Fund. These are dollars that come to us for when animals come into our shelter who are intact. There's a state fee that's assessed. We're taking those dollars that goes into a spay neuter fund, and we've been able to hold a couple clinics through that. One in March in Port Hueneme, and then another in Simi Valley in August. And we are planning to hold more of those. We're getting those scheduled. Those we partner again with Simi Valley Spay Neuter Mobile Clinic. And here's another one. You can see we're really trying to work with them because they are the primary mobile spay neuter service in our community. We're working on the final details. We're looking to be able to subsidize surgeries for TNR cats, for feral community cats, that would be done at the Simi Valley's brick and mortar clinic in Simi Valley that we would pay for, and trappers would be able to take cats there. So that would be an additional resource. And of course, through this dollars, we also provide ongoing subsidized vouchers for owners if they are taking their pet to a private practice veterinarian for surgery. We have a little bit of money that helps as an offset. So you can see we're doing quite a bit with the spay neuter. We would like to do more, and we're going to continue to look for ways. I want to go back to one slide that I skipped through because I had it in the wrong place, and that is to talk about the community resources. Again, Vcas is one player in this game, and we're very happy to be part of a network, but there's also some great organizations doing work here in our community. And if we talk about, I kind of tried to put it into the big buckets of who's doing what. So from a TNR funding standpoint, those people helping to pay for the cost of surgeries, we have the Herman Bennett Foundation, which is a very large funder of that for many organizations in our area. We have Span, which has their thrift shop in Ventura, and they raise funds specifically to help with spay neuter activities. And then there's us. On the surgery side, those who are actually performing the surgeries, the Humane Society of Ventura County is a huge player. They have done an amazing amount of work. Dr. Sisk there and her team and Jolene Hoffman, who's the director there, are just doing amazing work. They have some funding, and they have really stepped up and are doing a huge number of TNR surgeries. We have Mercy Crusade Spay Neuter Clinic. They primarily do spay neuter for owned pets. I spoke to them as late as last week, and they told me they have 2 slots a week for feral cats or community cats. So it's very small, but they're still in the game trying to help. There are private practitioners who at various times kind of jump in and help us, and we Humane Society, other supporters have paid private vets to provide some of this service. Simi Valley Spay Neuter we've talked about, and then us, we're doing the surgeries. On the shelter rescue side, again, the primary players for that, Humane Society in Ventura County up in Ojai, Santa Paula is another shelter, VCS, and then we have approximately 10 smaller rescue groups. Some are very small, some are a little bit larger, but those are the folks who are primarily providing the care, the ongoing care to cats and kittens in our community. And then on the network and education, we have the community cat charities, which is really remorphed and reformed recently. And of course, all of the organizations who are doing this work are doing everything we can, doing the best we can to help educate the community of how to be part of this solution and work with us in partnership with us. So that's a quick rundown on community resource, and I'll get back to the right place. So let's talk a little bit about kittens. Kittens are the cute, loving, wonderful things that come into our facility that we all get great joy, and then we're like, oh, it's kitten season, and we are overloaded. We have spent a lot of time messaging what I hope is the right message for what to do when people find kittens. And, you know, Dr. Hurly talked about it, that the key really is not bring the kittens to us, but help the community support those kittens for whatever that kitten specifically needs. Some kittens need to be just left. Leave them alone. Mom's got them. She's caring for them. Some kittens need something else because they truly have been abandoned or orphaned. So on our website, we have this fairly easy flow chart, which kind of talks about option A. You know, if you see them, these are the things that we ask you to do to help with these kittens. But ultimately, if someone is unable to do that, option B is to contact us, and we are here to help. And as much as we don't want to bring all kittens into our shelter, we also recognize that it's not easy for everyone to just walk away in that moment. And that's not necessarily the message that we're trying to give. We're trying to, as a continuum, help all of us gain a better understanding of what's the best thing to do for cats in our community. And we're not going to change that overnight, but we surely can make progress moving forward. I will share with you that Dr. Hurly even shared with me last week that some of what we have here is a little outdated, where we say, you know, wash the kittens for 6 to 8 hours, and if mom doesn't return, then reach out to us. Dr. Hurly's recommendations coming out of UC Davis is forget the 6 to 8 hours. If they're sick or injured, bring them to a shelter, and if not, that's not the right place for them. So we'll be speaking with Dr. Hurly and her team to help us remessage that a little bit. But I think the point when I say that is this is an incredibly complex issue, and it's ever changing. And we as an organization are continuing to try and stay abreast of the newest, the most up-to-date information and the most progressive services and best practices. So it's an evolving process. It's not a one and done for us. Kittens. There is a conversation that frequently happens, and we hear these comments and people say that the shelter turns away kittens. The truth of the matter is we don't turn away kittens. We are trying to have the community help us with kittens, and if they can keep them, we have kitten to go kits, we have other resources. But if they can't do that, or those kittens are sick or injured or unhealthy, we do take them in. And so here's the numbers. From January through August of this year, we've taken in 1,179 kittens. And I'm sure Dr. Hurly is shaking in her boots saying, "Ah!" Yes, I knew that would be her reaction. But again, we know that there's continued work to be done, but we also have kittens that are coming in. So when you look at these numbers, what I think is really most interesting to recognize is of this, I'll call it 11,080, 479 of these kittens are under 8 weeks age or under 8 weeks old, which means they're highly, highly intensive as far as labor and service that needs to be provided to them. And that's 41% of the kittens that have been coming in. Now, the good news, here's the good news. A couple years ago, these numbers were closer to 3,000. So there is progress, but we are still taking in an enormous number of kittens, and it has a direct impact on our capacity for care for the other animals that we are required and need to serve, and those who have possibly a greater need, i.e. the sick and injured animals that come to us on a daily basis with very limited staffing patterns. We have our kitten foster program. We have 2 full-time staff dedicated to foster care. Now, to be fair, there are some dogs in this, but the number is fairly small. It is almost exclusively for cats and kittens. We have a foster care coordinator and an off-site foster assistant. That off-site foster assistant is the person who helps manage the cats that go to the PetSmarts and Pet Charities, PetSmart and Petco locations where we do adoptions. We have approximately 40 foster kitten homes that are dedicated by unbelievable volunteers in the community. They say, I will take kittens. And at any given time, they have 3 or 4 kittens in their home. These folks are providing 24-hour care. And when they are bottle babies and they come in and they're a day or 2 days old, they're providing care for multiple weeks every 2 hours, feeding those kittens. So again, the amount of work is not just at the shelter side, it's on the foster care side. And there's 40 homes, which is amazing, but we don't have 400 of those homes. We have 40 of those homes. Kittens are all medically treated. We transfer them into foster. They come to the shelter. We medically treat them. We transfer them into a foster home. And then they receive veterinary rechecks from us every 2 weeks. So again, you can start doing the math of how many kittens we're serving, how many touches our veterinary team is having for each kitten. It's extraordinary. And it's a way and above and beyond the capacity that we actually have, but we want to do the best we can. You know, we're all people who work in an animal welfare field. Our desire is to serve the animals, to do the best we can. It's heartbreaking to not be able to do that. And then for kittens, they have to be 1.5 pounds or 8 weeks, depending on kind of, that's about the guidelines. At that point, we do pediatric spay neuter, and then they are adopted out. They are often adopted out by their foster family directly, or we adopt them out through the shelter or through one of our placement sites. So, whoops. So, you know, again, you can, for the folks who are part of our foster group, our foster network, these are similar posts that they see every single day of kittens that came in today. Hey, we got a queen in with 5 kittens last night. They need a foster. Mom's doing great. They look very close to being able to be weaned. Please let them know if you can help. The scared mom and her babies, she really needs out of the shelter.
Oh.
What's amazing is that our fosters respond within an hour, 2 hours. They sit and they watch our Facebook page. Singleton bottle babe, 1 day old, good latch, appetite, needs foster today. And I see this every day. I see the post, and then I see 3 people comment, I can come get them. I'll be there at 6 o'clock tonight. It's an amazing thing. And thank God for our foster families, because we couldn't do it. And the work that our foster coordinator does for this, it's amazing. But this is just typical for our Facebook page. Now it's a closed site. You can't just go see it, but this is what we see. You know, bottom one, we've got 3 3-week bottle babies need foster by tonight. A foster can take them tomorrow. Can anyone help these cuties for tonight? And so that happens. One foster family will take them for tonight, get them through, and then they get transferred to someone else. So there's an enormous amount of effort and love being given to these animals every single day, but it takes its toll, and it has a capacity component for us. Really quickly, just to share some other numbers. This is some data that I actually got from the community Cat Charities recently. They have been tracking kittens that are coming into Ventura County Animal Services. This does not include kittens going to any other rescue in the area or Humane Society. This is specifically to VCAS. Now, this data you can see is from September 2020 through May of this year. So it doesn't even have really this year's kitten season in this. But each pin, if you look at the red dot, each pin or each number in the pin represents at least 1 litter. And that litter could be 1 kitten to 7 kittens. You will see, you know, the highest concentration is in the Oxnard area. It's not something we don't know about. But what this number tells us is that there's 183 litters identified in this mapping, which equals 380 kittens just during that time period coming into VCS. It doesn't include where the rest of the kittens went, or those that are picked up and cared for by just good Sams who are doing all that work on their own, and the trappers who are doing that great work. This is just a little bit more of a highlighted area. And again, we can see at the highest concentration is the city of Oxnard. We know that. Supervisor Ramirez and I have had numerous conversations about this, and Commissioner Zaragoza and I will continue to have some conversations about this. But it's a huge number, and it is a huge concentration. So I think just really quickly some key takeaways on this, and then we'll open this up for public comments and questions and answers. You know, is that we all agree there's a need for enhanced services to address and support the cats here in our community. None of us want our cats to suffer. Nobody wants that to happen in the community. The question is, how do we do this, and how do we do it well, and how do we do it strategically in a way that really has sustainability and long-term impact? There are numerous passionate and dedicated people who are in the community who are working tirelessly to help the cats. We have trappers who are out there spending countless hours. We have resources that are being provided to help support this. There is a true desire, and that's really the good news, is that people really do want to address this issue and want to be impactful. multiple organizations. But this is a very complex issue. And as you saw from Dr. Hurley's presentation, this really is something that requires incredible thoughtfulness for us to be impactful and make a difference. I just wanted to share a little bit about for our return to owner. I know I've shared this kind of data before when we've looked at, our annual numbers, but, you may remember when we talk about our return to owner rate, our return to owner rate for dogs is extremely high. The national average for dogs is 26%, and we average somewhere between 50 and 55%, which means we do an amazing job helping dogs get reunited with their owners. Cats, unfortunately, the national average is somewhere between 2 and 5%. I'm happy to say we're at the top end of that at 5%. But that means 95% of the cats who come to our shelter never find their way back to their home. And the question is, what is their home? Right? We think of it in a traditional way that it's a home with a family inside of 4 walls. But really, there's a huge percentage of those cats who probably their home is outside and they were doing really well. And we know that 65 to 85% of the cats who are living outdoors are being cared for by someone. So when we actually pick them up, those healthy cats, and we bring them to a shelter, we've actually displaced them. We've taken them away from their home, and no one's going to come looking for them. Now they sit again in a kennel. We do a great job sheltering, but we're a shelter. We're not a home. We're a transition, not a destination. And so those chances for reunification are really greatly lessened. And I think this is also one other piece of information that's really important. Cats don't travel very far. When we see a stray cat or what we perceive to be a stray or lost cat in the community, the likelihood is that cat is, I don't know, 2.5 houses away from where it lives, whether it be an outdoor area that it lives or an indoor-outdoor area that it lives. If it's truly an outdoor cat, there may be 17. They travel about 17 houses. So again, picking them up and grabbing a cat, if you will, from, I'll pick one, from Simi and bringing it to Camarillo, the likelihood that they're going to get reunited back to Simi is very slim. Which again goes to the reasons that Dr. Hurly has really been promoting all these years, that leave to healthy cats. They're doing fine. Yes, let's try and get them spay neutered if that's what's needed, but let's not pull them from their communities. The most effective activities really are targeted and strategic, and that applies to TNR. Unfortunately, we often have folks here in our community who are doing what I call shotgun TNR. They're grabbing cats. They're just grabbing cats and bringing them in for service, and that's fabulous for that one cat. But it doesn't have the long-lasting impact as if we were to say, and I use this just simply as an example, if we took an area that we know is highly concentrated with community cats, and we said, we're going to target this zone, be it a zip code, these 4 blocks, whatever it is, and all the resources that we're expending as a community go to only those cats for a period of time. Let's address that area. And then when we've got that one, we go to the next one. We're not going to get them all, as Dr. Hurly said, but we've got a much better chance if we can do a group, and that takes a lot of time and effort, and it takes a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? It has to be very measured. It's hard because when you see that cat in another community, say, oh, I can't pick that one up. Yeah, that one cat over there may not get the service that we want to provide to it. But in the picture, the large picture for us as communities, it's important to figure out how do we make the system better long-term? And that's really, for me, my goal. How do we do this on a long-term perspective? So we know we've got lack of adequate resources for services, whether it be funding and availability for spay neuter locations. We don't have a lot. When we go back to that list, there are not many of us who are providing spay neuter TNR surgeries. And those of us who are even having to pull back. We are on a temporary suspension at our own agency for TNR. We are limited by staffing issues that we have right now. And there's lack of funding and availability to provide shelter to the kittens that are often brought in by trappers. Again, we've kind of talked about that. And the strategic approach. We do not have a strategic approach here in this community. That's kind of been that has been my desire by putting together the task group so that we can start talking about this in a strategic way, which also means looking at funding from a strategic way. How do we all work together in partnership to address this problem? And I truly believe that when we can come together as a community, we can make a difference. I don't think that this is a situation that doesn't have an end. I think we can be impactful. I think we can make a huge change in our community for this, but we are going to have to all work together and be willing to do it. Again, I'm incredibly grateful and proud to work with the Humane Society and Herman Bennett Foundation and Community Cat Charities and several of the other organizations that are in town that are doing great work. I think that the key takeaway to this for me is for everyone to have just gotten a broader understanding of the complexity of this issue, recognize it's not, oh, there's just a few cats out there and why can't we bring them to the shelter and fix the problem? Because it's not anything that we can do independently. It is something that's a community activity, and that it really is going to require a village to take care of this. So that concludes, I think that concludes my part of the presentation. So I think what we can do, Carmen, you let me know, Commissioner Ramirez, if you'd like this, we can.
Well, what I'd like to do is do a time check because
Great.
I'm not sure we'd actually plan to go. I don't know what our end time was.
12:30.
12:30. I personally have a lot of questions, but I can ask you those offline. I really want to thank Dr. Hurly for being here and for your presentation, Director Rose. And let's just I know we had one person who signed up for a public comment, and let's, maybe you could handle that part.
Sure. I believe that that one person is with us, Lee, from Community Cat Charities with a kitten. So Lee, we'll turn this over to you.
Hi, everybody. This is Saba. She's one of Ventura County's underage orphan kittens that was surrendered to Ventura County Services for Vcas. I volunteer and foster for Vcas, and Saba is my foster kitten. My name is Lee Bussey. I'm a biologist with a past career as a research scientist at Amgen in Thousand Oaks. I am also a certified feline training and behavior specialist. Last time I commented at one of your meetings, I was representing the Community Cats Coalition serving Ventura County. I'm here as president of a new local nonprofit 501(c) called the Community Cats Charity. The Community Cats Charity partners with Vcas, along with several other local organizations that share common goals. We teach the public how to do trap, neuter, return, also known as TNR, and we loan out high quality humane traps. We help community cat caregivers understand the importance of TNR and help find needed food and medical care for the cats they tend. Public education is also very important. It's needed to help end this overpopulation of stray, ferals, and abandoned cats in our county. These stray, feral, and abandoned cats survive with the help of our local citizens. People love to feed the cats, and the cats get really, really good at begging. We believe teaching these citizens next steps in caring for these cats will help to bring the cat population under control. There's a common story that we often hear. We started feeding this pregnant cat last spring, and by the end of the year, here we are feeding 15 to 20 cats and kittens. And it can happen that fast. One pregnant cat can lead to 20 cats in less than a year. At this point, the cat caregiver out in the public is overwhelmed and desperate for help. So they start surrendering the cats and kittens to the shelter. The current systems available are unable to handle this flow of felines. So many cats stay out there breeding and having more kittens. If we can educate these people about public services that could help before they hit their little cat population explosion, we could greatly decrease many of the related issues. The problem is the cats currently outnumber all of the combined county community cat services available. And some days it just seems like the cats are better at making kittens than we are at getting them fixed. So I hope the city councils can share this message with their constituents. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Other folks wanted to comment? I think maybe at this point we should ask the commissioners. I see Commissioner Santangelo has a question or would like to speak. Let's have her speak, okay?
It's actually a comment, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I first wanted to speak
Susan,
to
where's your kitty, because I usually see your kitty.
you know, there's one asleep staring at me.
Okay.
But I probably have shared with this group before that I was a foster family. And, you know, Jackie, one of the things you didn't mention was a lot of those kittens that go into foster homes are also sick. And so, you know, my experience was not only, with bottle babies and what they needed, but you were also giving them medicine, which is always fun with kittens. But, and, you know, it just goes to the commitment of the people in the community that are so dedicated. I was fostering when I wasn't working, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And I'm still active on that Facebook group. And it's just amazing how many people are helping each other. But the reason I'm just speaking to this is how much we are dependent on the community. And the other thing, I think this is a real opportunity for us to do some really strong community education and outreach. I've found in my experience as a council member in just 3 years that often what the public thinks is an easy fix is not, and is not grounded in science and in evidence and the research we have. And I'm so pleased to see, and Dr. Hurly, thank you. That was so interesting and so informative, and really helps to express the complexity of this. And so I think, you know, our opportunity is to reach out to the community and to really explain why the shelter does things that it does and the evidence. And that's for marketing and people. That's not a thing I'm good at, but it's an opportunity for us to really reach out to our community and help educate. Thank you. And thank you, Jackie. This was so super informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Santangelo. And you do know about science and evidence-based as in your medical background. Thank you. We have other comments? Susan?
Yeah. Oh, I want to echo the thanks that Susan expressed. I thought both presentations by Dr. Hurly and Director Rose were absolutely phenomenal. I'd like to see if I could put it on our local public television station, and I'm going to share it on the Ojai Valley Animal Kingdom page. I'll share it with my colleagues on the council and every way that I can, because the public needs to fully understand the magnitude of the problem and how utterly irresponsible it is to allow their own cats to breed, and the need to participate in any way they can with the TNR programs. So I want to, help get that message out. And the other thing I want to suggest is, it seems like the need is for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the need is for more spay neuter mobile clinics in Oxnard. If that's a need and the funding isn't there, sometimes people are more apt to give if there's like a specific goal, because the problem is so huge. But if you just had the goal to fund another spay neuter mobile van and what it costs, and allow people to contribute specifically for that, is that something that, it's a small thing, but would that be a step in the right direction or something like that?
Dr. Hurly, do you want to take that, or would you like me to take that?
I guess I'll take it in a general sense, which is that always for both funding and sort of organizing and impact, more targeted is going to be more bang for the buck, more able to garner support, and also going to be more impactful. I think one of the real frustrations we're dealing with right now is that it's not just a funding issue, it's a staffing issue. And this is across the board in veterinary medicine. Emergency clinics are shutting down. I don't know if your communities have been impacted, but that's not, I hope that, I trust that we will find solutions to that. And so I think that is a good thought, like to approach, like identify what are the hot spots, and even what are the hot spots within the hot spots. If you get funding for a spay neuter van, what's the mobile home park that is causing the most grief, the most distress, the most kittens, the most of those sick orphan litters, and tackle that, really tackle it sort of comprehensively, and then move on to the next most distressing situation, and so on.
Thank you. Other commissioners have any comments? I don't see any other hands up. I do want to say that I think we have so many people who care in our community. And I really want to thank the foster families, people like Susan, who dedicated so much time to taking care of these little innocent creatures. And I personally adopted 2 kittens during kitten season a few years ago, and I still have one because the other one unfortunately had an accident. And suffered an accident. And when I was growing up, my best friend was a cat. He was sort of feral, but he knew where he slept at night, right by my pillow. But I think it's so important to get this information out so people who are well-intentioned get better information. And I see that I have a big task because a lot of folks are participating in this in Oxnard without maybe understanding what the implications are. I also want to mention that the feral cat population is really devastating our bird population, and we don't want to see that. So just information, science, evidence, so important. I want to thank our staff too, because I know you're struggling with this, and I have heard that there is a tremendous problem with staffing in the veterinary industry, shall I say. And I think that there's burnout, there's people having to do things they don't always want to do, and it just takes its toll. So I appreciate you all. And with that, unless we have any other public comment, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Let's get this information out to people. I will be talking to City of Oxnard folks and people in El Rio. This is my district, and I want to get information out to them. And please, let's make this available as far and wide as we can, so people understand what's the best thing to do to control the population and take care of these animals. We want to be that kind of a community that takes care of animals, takes care of people, and takes care of the workers who are trying to take care of them too. So with that, I think we're ready to adjourn.
Commissioner Ramirez, if I can just piggyback on that for one moment. We will make sure that this is on our website. First off, it will be posted on our website. We'll have it probably in a couple places, but definitely on the commission page, because this is a commission meeting, so it will be there. We will send the link out to all of you so that you have that for the direct link for the YouTube that you can then share. And as many of you mentioned, share it far and wide. We will share it on our social media platforms, but yeah, this will be available. There's also, I want to direct it, there's also quite a bit of information on our website regarding cats, community cat shelter services, and feel free to, to just kind of drive people to the website. It has a lot of good information, and it has a lot of links to a lot of other fabulous information. There are organizations out there who this is really, everything that they live for, whether it be a Kitten Lady or Alley Cat Alleys or Million Cat Challenge. There's so much information out there, and there's so much work being done to help us better understand this. So we've got a lot of links for that information too. So feel free to use our site as a resource driver.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Dr. Hurly. Very fascinating, mind-blowing information. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jackie Rose. Thank you, all of my commissioners here, my staff, and members of the public. So have a good day and pet your kitty.
You're
Thank
here.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Dr.
everybody.
Hurley.
Bye.